Some of you were at the Rick Jiha business planning session, which, and some of those of you that are in the coaching program, we're going to talk more about implementing some of that sort of stuff. And one of the things that he said that resonated with me, because it sounds a lot like something, it's very similar to what I've been preaching. Is that the right word? Preaching? Preaching. It works. It sounds like it. Is that you have to develop a habit of doing lead generation on a consistent and persistent basis, which would mean Monday through Friday, to spend a set amount of time, 5 days a week, on lead generation. And one of the things that he had suggested was that most people, this isn't the metaphor that Rick used, but I know people that have gone to the gym, right? They haven't worked out in years, right? So they go to the gym and they work out really, really hard, and then the next day they're really sore, and then they don't go to the gym for at least a month, and then they go to the gym again and they work out really, really, really hard, and then they're even sorer than they were before, so then they don't go to the gym for. I don't know if this is resonating with anybody, but that system doesn't really work very well. And so although as we move up to what does a big producer do that little producers and non-producers don't do, and the answer is they spend more time on lead generation. And there's a course that I'll be doing next year, I like saying that, called 36-12-3, which is on how to do 36 transactions a year in 12 months. That's the 12. And with 3 hours a day on lead generation. But for most of us, if you spent 3 hours one day on lead generation, you probably wouldn't do anything for that week. Right? You understand? They would be like, that's it. Right? I'm worn out. I'm done with it. So to start slowly, and by slowly that could mean as little as 30 minutes a day. Right? If you were to, you can talk to at least a person every 10 minutes if you're calling. Right? My numbers were, and I have to admit I'm a little analytical about this stuff. When I was calling people, I was basically connecting with somebody every 12 minutes, right? Your mileage may vary. So if you could spend 30 minutes a day, but every day, right? Do you understand? Just like if you were working out, it would be better to spend 30 minutes exercising every day for 5 days in a row than it would be to just do 3 hours one day and then nothing else. And so one of the things that we would talk about, because what would you do in those 30 minutes is, for example, Tim, that property that sold in your neighborhood, I'll bet that a lot of neighbors would be interested in hearing that story. And do you think there are more buyers out there for properties? You saw the open house. So do we being a sort of a universal real estate agent, do we have more buyers for properties in that neighborhood? And given the difference between what it was listed for and what it's sold for, the thing with sellers the call to action is, would you like to find out what your home is worth in today's market? Right? Would you like to find that out? And so then that would lead to a listing appointment. But that would be something that you could do for the 30 minutes. How would you get, there's two options, right? One option is you could go and knock on doors and talk to people, right? You could have a flyer about what's happening in the neighborhood, including that particular property. Look at what your neighbors have been up to, is what my flyer always used to say. You also, if you were to talk to a friendly title company, and all the title companies are pretty friendly, you could ask them if they could give you a phone list of everybody that owns a home in 95124 that has a phone number that they're allowed to call. That you're allowed to call, and you could call people. We have scripts for all those things. All right. It's just something you need to integrate that into your system. Today, however, we're talking about power session number 16, which is market and service your listings. Sell the listing, win a client for life. This, of course, sort of assumes that you're going to have listings. This is, you can see a copy of the general schedule where the numbering is the same, but the days aren't. Tomorrow is contracts to close, post-close systems, and then on Monday we're going to do our last accountability section. We're going to start with the part that everybody likes me to start with, which is what's called the daily 10-4. One of the questions I used to ask buyers and sellers was because if I had a buyer and the buyer was thinking about lowballing, like in this market, that's probably not a good strategy. Of course, it would depend. Some properties are overpriced. Somebody says, I want a lowball. I'd like to come in low. You never know. One of my questions would be, are you serious about buying a home? Right? Are you serious? And if they said, well, yeah, we're serious, then they need to act like it, right? They need to make an offer in this market. I have people who are wanting to sell their home and they say, well, we want to price it high. We don't want a lockbox because we don't want people just dropping by. We want you to be there when the property is shown. We want it by appointment only. I would ask them, are you serious about selling your home? Right? Because it's going to be very difficult to sell the home under those circumstances. And if you're an agent who I might ask, are you serious about making money in real estate? Are you serious about making this a career? And if you said yes, then you would need to be doing these 4 things, right? The daily 10-4 means that you should build and manage your database, add 10 people to your database. You know, I can remember talking to somebody who has been in the business a long time. She's had good years and then really, really bad years, and recently has been having a really bad year, the last couple of years. And I remember asking her, how many people does she have? Does she have a database? Do you have a contact management system? And she said, well, it's mostly on paper. She said, I do have a computer and, I have Outlook. And I asked, how many people do you have in Outlook? And she said, about 65. This is somebody who's been in the business for more than 10 years. You've got to know more than 60. Oh, I know a lot more than that. Yeah, but you understand, if you don't put it in the database and then you don't have some sort of an automated system and a reminder and you follow up with the people, you're losing business, right? So the idea is a daily goal that you're going to put 10 people in the database. The database, if you're at Keller Williams, is called E-Edge. I'm going to wander to the site and show you where you can get information about what we're talking about today. But those of you that have seen me before, have I pointed out where there's training on how to use E-Edge, right? There's books if you like books. There's videos if you like videos. There's lots of different things. Prospect means to connect with 10 people. This is not a huge goal, right? I was doing about 12 an hour, right? So that we're talking about spending an hour of time. If you were on the phone, it wouldn't take that long. Even going out door knocking. One of the things I've been participating in is called Bold. And in Bold, these are serious people. First, you have to pay some money to go through it. And these are serious people, and there was a number of people there. Their picture was taken. They're on Facebook. They were contacting 100 people a day, right? 100 people a day. One guy was doing it by door knocking, and he was spending 4 to 6 hours knocking on doors, 100 people a day. But so we're not. What was that commercial for the almonds? All we ask is a can a month or something like that. All we ask is 10 a day, right? But to make it part of your schedule to time block and to actually do it. Follow up with 10 handwritten notes. This comes originally from a guy called Joe Stumpf, whose material was stolen by somebody called Buffini and Brian Buffini, and people aren't used to getting things handwritten in notes in the mail. And previewing 10 homes, which we'll talk about that. How many of you have been previewing property? Oh, good. I can know who to call on. So milestones, what you need to be tracking is how many appointments, how many agreements, how many contracts written, and how many contracts were closed. Part of what we do in Bold is people actually make calls for 45 minutes in the session and then report, and there's a bunch of appointments that people get. Right? We're going to practice that. I don't know where the Power Hour video is for today, so we're going to skip that. And we're going to start with what's on page 16-4. Get your head in the game. What we're talking about today is marketing and servicing a listing, right, as it says in that opening line. And the reason why you want to learn how to do this is you want to be recognized as an agent who gets listings sold. Be a premier provider of customer service. You win a customer for life. Repeat and referral business is where most real estate agents get their leads from. Your customers get what they want, a sale for the best possible price in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle. That list are the three traditional things that sellers want. They want to get the most money in the quickest time with the least inconvenience. What we're trying to do, it says first and foremost, is about getting the listing sold by attracting buyers to the listing. If you do that job well, you will get additional benefits for your business. Now, what I always used to, first of all, in a market like this, sometimes there's a pushback from the sellers as to convenience. So what that means is that if you were to list a home today, you might hear from the seller, well, we don't need to do all this stuff because it's going to sell anyhow. Right? You understand? All we have to do is put it on the market, put it in the MLS. We probably don't even need an open house. We'll just get a bunch of offers. We'll take the highest one and get on with our lives. The seller's point of view, right? Because they're going to think, well, it's easy now. The question is, I would ask the seller is, would you like to net the most money possible? Right? And they're probably going to say yes. If they want to net the most money possible, the way that's accomplished is by exposing the property to the greatest number of potential qualified buyers. The metaphor I always used was if you were going to buy a new suit or a new dress and you went to the store and you found something that was just the right color, the right style, and the perfect fit, would you pay more for that article of clothing than you would for something that didn't fit so good, didn't have the right color, didn't look right, wasn't the right style? So our job as a real estate agent is to find the buyer for whom your home fits the best. They will pay more. And the way in which we find the buyer who fits the best for your home is we have to expose your property to the greatest potential number of qualified buyers. Where I'm going with this is that you're going to want to do the whole marketing plan even in a market that appears easy. First of all, you need to learn it because it wasn't this way 6-7 months ago, right? The market wasn't like this. It was a buyer's market for the first almost half of the year, and then it changed. It could change again, right? The other thing is that if you do this right, each listing should be more business for you. Your goal should be that every time you get a listing, you get at least one additional transaction as a result of having that listing. You understand? If you have a listing, you want to get either another listing or a buyer or both. And if you're not given time to promote the listing, you're not going to get another transaction. And I know that agents in this market say, well, it's easy, all I have to do, why should I do all this? Right? Why bother? Meeting your seller's needs in a focused and communicative way does more than get you on the road to immediate payday. It builds your reputation. A communicative way. What do you think the number one complaint sellers have with their agents? They don't communicate enough. Now, when the market is bad, I can remember not wanting to call the sellers because I had nothing good to say. Nobody has shown your home in the last week. We have no offers. No agent has called me. We did an open house and 2 people came through. There are 3 more properties in the neighborhood that have come on the market that sort of look like yours and they're cheaper. Have you seen any good movies lately? Right? You understand? We didn't want, why, but even if that's all you have to say, well, forgetting the movie part, you need to talk with them on a consistent basis. By the way, one of the things that Keller Williams has added to E-Edge is something called activity plans. And there are videos on how to do it. I may do a class because I get tired of not teaching, I guess. But basically what an activity plan is that when you take a listing, you can create, they already have some preset ones, and they'll remind you when to call people and generally what to talk about. So it builds your reputation as a top listing agent, generating referrals and other leads that will convert more client sales contracts and paydays ahead. Do you think people's friends, family, relatives, and coworkers chat with them when they know their home is on the market? And if things are going poorly, do you think that the seller tells their friend, maybe even posts it on Facebook about what an awful experience it's been so far? Right? Yeah. You think so? Right? So if they're really happy, the goal is to make them really happy. Right? Yes?
It's a good idea to specialize your, what you're going to do. And when you sell luxury house, like Alan, whatever company, Noel said they really do more high-end houses. I should not to contact the same way I am doing now. I'm trying to do a lower house, less than $500,000. If I want to do it close to $1 million, I should change my attitude, or can I do the same way? Or do I have to study more what high-end really, sellers, agents do?
In our marketplace, $1 million house looks like a $300,000 house in Stockton, right? It's oftentimes just the difference in the zip code than a luxury home. But competing for the true luxury home market requires a lot more resources. For example, some of them expect real virtual tours. By real, I mean a professional video camera person going through with high-end cameras. Sometimes they take aerial videos of the property out of helicopters. Their brochures are thick paper, and this is generally not the place to start as a career, because those people are oftentimes more difficult to work with. Which what I always tried to do, first of all, I started by farming Blossom Valley, right? Because it's a market where the schools aren't terrible, right? The schools are okay. It's turns over. The prices are the average and median price in Blossom Valley is a little bit less than the average and median price in Santa Clara County. Right, because it's weighted as, Palo Alto is part of Santa Clara County, right? So it was a little bit, and it was an area that moved. Even, I remember when the market was really bad and it was hard to sell in Blossom Valley. And then after I got going, I started in Almaden, right? And all of a sudden now the price point has gone up. But if you look at the numbers, there's a lot fewer sales in Almaden. They're also fussier people, right? If you don't live in Almaden. Right, do you understand? If you don't live in Saratoga, and you're there knocking on doors, people will say, "Well, where do you live around here?" They want to know that you actually live in that community.
So
right?
Still advantage if you live area?
Not necessarily. I lived in Morgan Hill when I farmed Blossom Valley. I don't think anybody ever asked me, "Do you live in Blossom Valley?" Nobody seemed to care. Right, you understand? And there's disadvantages of farming. Picking the area where you live is not necessarily a business decision. It may be a convenience decision, but it's not necessarily a business decision. If you bought a McDonald's franchise, they will not let you pick where it's going to go because they're afraid you'll make a non-business decision. They'll tell you where to put it, right? So I lived in Morgan Hill, but I farmed Blossom Valley, and no one ever asked me. Right. I also had agents that worked for me that lived in Almaden that farmed evergreen. Right. Just because you live in Almaden does not mean you want to farm Almaden. Right. Because sometimes when Almaden is going, it's good, and when it's not moving, it's really ugly. Right. One of our brokers had an office in Saratoga. I was talking to him the other day, and only 25% of their business came from Saratoga. Right, you understand? Because there isn't enough movement in that market to sustain a business. All right. So my suggestion is that you pick an area that turns over. You find a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of competition, that there's no dominant agent farming. There's lots to choose from, right? Chris Heller, mega agent president of KW Worldwide, says he always believed in under-promising and over-delivering. It's about setting expectations. We say this when we work. This is when we are available. Here's when and how you can reach us. Here's how we're going to update you. That's an important thing. Do you want to take phone calls at 10 o'clock at night? Probably not. All right. So does your doctor take phone calls all night long? Your lawyer? Will your lawyer answer your email at midnight?
But it depends.
It
I'm sorry, I've lost my voice. My vocal cord got infected.
Oh.
So,
Too much door knocking.
It's right on the board. Like one of those little, you wear one of those little boards around your neck and write things and show it to people. No, go ahead. That's all right. Jennifer just wants to read the, that's okay. That's good. All right. So let me just, while this is, you can go overboard with this, but what I'm suggesting is we talked about having a mindset where you're going to do a significant amount of business. And so what you want to do is to develop the habits of somebody who's doing a lot of business rather than the habits of somebody who's not doing a lot of business. All right, do we have a... All right, yes, raise your hand. That's fine. Thank you. Go ahead.
So Carmela said when she takes calls, it depends who's calling. Her friend, who's her buyer, called at 10:30 at night, and it was fine.
That's right. There's always exceptions, but my point is that if you wanted to develop the habits of a top producer, you're not going to want to be taking calls all the time, right? And with sellers, there are many real estate agents, I know because I call real estate agents, and their voicemail will say, thanks for calling, I'm busy right now, I'm either, they'll say things like, I'm working with clients, I'm showing property, I'm selling homes, I will answer my calls at a certain time, right? And at 10 o'clock and at 2 o'clock and at, and I'll call you back, yes.
Well, especially now, say that, when I'm just starting, part of the time blocking thing, I could time block, half hour a day just to get in touch with whoever I'm working with, right? I mean,
right.
You could call every day, just say, nothing new to report, just checking.
Well, every day what you might want to do with the point of what I've highlighted is you might want to have a discussion with your client as to how often and in what manner they want to be contacted. I've had several clients from Google, and one of them in particular, and he wasn't the only one that ever said this, he did not want phone calls. Did not want phone calls. He said, don't call me. He said email, text me. He did not want phone calls, right? And so I didn't call him. By the way, the California Association of Realtors, I have the slide someplace, but I'm not, asked sellers and buyers how they wanted agents to communicate with them. Now, with buyers, which we're not talking about necessarily right now, a significant percentage, something like 8 or 9%, which may not sound significant, but I thought it was said they wanted Twitter direct messages, right? And they also surveyed California Association of Realtor members, and they asked them how many of them use Twitter direct messaging, and it was 0, right, of the people that responded. So, by the way, I'm in Bold yesterday, and I'm doing something with Twitter, and I'm sitting next to Jeff Hansen, who said, why are you on Twitter? Because he was on Twitter at the same time, and we were telling everybody that we were at Bold. This isn't that hard to do, but do you understand if your client says, this is not hard. I have videos, by the way, on how to use Twitter for real estate. That I'm not, I do. This is not that hard to do, but if your client says, that's what I like, that's how I communicate, that's what I'd prefer, send me a message, then that's what you might consider doing that. So, yes, Harry.
So what was your logic for telling people by that means? I mean, are you just keeping communication open to various people? I don't know who your recipients were.
Well, I don't always know who my recipients are either. The thing is that I use social media, and I have people that sometimes it's a generational thing, but not always. I'm over 30, and so there's certain groups of people that are more responsive to certain mediums, and
No,
younger.
I understand. It's just, I find it ironic sometimes. People on Facebook will say, hey, I'm going in and having a cup of coffee.
Yeah, well, the thing about that is that nobody cares what you had for lunch, but they all care about what they had for lunch, right? And so my classes on how to use Facebook, that's not what I would necessarily. But for example, I didn't have time to do it today, but oftentimes I recruit people, right? I mean, I'll admit that. And so I oftentimes will post that I'm doing an Ignite class, and I'll create an event, like I created an event on our company Facebook page for the Rick Jihad class, and I have over 1,000 people that are friends that are real estate agents, right? I have another group that aren't real estate agents, but so I spent a long time inviting a bunch of people, and some of whom came. Right, and so even if they didn't, at least they know that I'm doing that, right? And so a lot of times, if I'm doing a career session or I'm doing something, I might. So the idea is that do you want people that to know that you're in real estate, right? And so if you were to just say something either on Twitter or Facebook, and I use a program that sends it out to Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at the same time. And so the idea that I'm at a training, that we're doing something, that it increases the awareness among our target group that we're in real estate, right? But we're gonna.
I'm sorry, you set up groups for Twitter. I'm not totally familiar with Twitter. I understand what it is, but
You can set up groups for Twitter, but that's not. I'm going to be having classes. In fact, I'm going to be doing a class at the board in December on LinkedIn. I believe it's going to be held at the board. I'm already scheduled, and I'm going to talk to them today, and I'll invite you all to attend. But we're going to be doing sessions on. I'm going to be doing sessions on Twitter and LinkedIn and some of the others. All right. So so do you understand what I'm saying is you might want to have a discussion with people as to when and how often. I always get reminded of having Italian food for some reason, So at least we always know who it is. So the 2 points here. One is have a discussion with people as to how often and when you're going to talk to them. To tell them I'm going to be giving you a call every Wednesday night or every, and would that work out to give you a report on what's happened? Right? Sometimes I would do it on Monday. Right? Because if we did an open house, that's usually the weekend. The second part is doing what you say you're going to do always. That's a weird idea. So if you tell them that you're going to call them every Monday, you should call them every Monday. That's the advantage of having a plan that you can launch that reminds you to call somebody every Monday. If I said to a seller, we will call you once a week with feedback from any buyers who see your home, that really meant they would get 2 calls a week, even if the second call was to say there's nothing new to report since we last called. Do this and the seller will never feel like you're unavailable or giving marketing in the sale less than your very best. So if you say you're going to call them once a week, call them twice. Right? But I wouldn't call them every day. Right? Today's plan of action, we're going to discover the techniques for and advantages of staging a listing. I know a good stager, but there are a lot of them. I'll answer some questions about how to do it. Review the elements of the 14-point marketing plan, which is a Keller Williams marketing plan. Learn the essentials of great service to sellers from the moment they sign the listing agreement all the way through closing. Closing is what we're going to concentrate on tomorrow. and study strategies and tips for great communication and super service. That sounds good. Gear up. One of the things that we mentioned, how many people have written a value proposition for buyers and sellers? Don't everybody raise their hands at once. It's okay. Just
What does that mean?
all right. In the first session, Rev Up, we talked about a statement of purpose as to what you're going to do with people that are thinking of buying or selling. Yeah. You have one?
I did for a couple of buyers,
For a couple of buyers.
and I had a listing appointment yesterday, so I did for the day.
Okay. So, for example, a common one would be that you, the three things that they want when they're selling is to sell for the most money in the least amount of time with the least inconvenience. We have in past handouts samples of value propositions. Is negotiation important? Negotiation skills. Do large organizations spend significant amount of money hiring professional negotiators to negotiate for them? Will they send employees to expensive, long trainings on negotiation strategies? The reason why would they do that, I've actually asked clients this, why do you think companies do that? And it's because negotiation skills work and it'll get them a better bottom line, right? Which we're going to talk a little bit about negotiation. Value proposition page from either your pre-listing or your listing consultation package. And the 14-point marketing plan in eEdge. I'll show you where that is. We have a copy of it, I think, in the materials. And access to eEdge. And I have access to that. A daily affirmation. I always give more in value than I receive in cash. If you do this well and do it right, and what we're talking about is when I was I used to call this class seller service, right? Or providing service for the seller. That's really what we're talking about. And the better job you do, the more happy they're going to be with your commission. And the more happy they'll be with you. The word fiduciary. A person who's legally or ethically entrusted to manage money or property between two or more parties. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I need one more copy. How about that? I don't understand why. Just give me a second. Sorry about this. Come on. In a minute. I think it'll be coming. It looks like it's the one over there. Good morning, Jackie. Good to see you. So the word fiduciary, which is something that would be discussed, we're not talking about what we talked about in real estate license training, for those of you that were in it. We're talking about the concept is similar, but if you're a fiduciary, what we're really talking about is customer service, as opposed to just being a functionary. Does that make sense, the difference between being a functionary and a fiduciary? It has to do with the level of service. So if you show your clients every day that you know the job of marketing and selling their home and are taking every step necessary to get the job done, you will win a sale and their loyalty in the future. If this sounds like a lot of words but not really a lot of work, think again. There are 3 steps: staging the property, marketing the property, and communicating with the sellers. Now, we have checklists, and notice it says provide a checklist. One of the things that I always used to discuss with sellers are, what do we have control over? Do we have control over the market? Not really. Do we have control over the competition? Not really. one of the things that I would always do with sellers is I would schedule the day to take them around and show them all the other homes that are on the market in their neighborhood. All right. Sometimes I did that because I hadn't seen them yet myself, but but the idea is that I've had people say, because what you don't want is say to a seller, well, that other home is nicer than yours, and them to say, no, it's not, we've seen it and you haven't. Right? So I'm assuming that you're previewing property, but I would take them to see what the other homes look like. So, because it gives them idea of what pricing strategies go for condition. Do you understand? We can't control the market, we can't control the neighborhood, we can't control the area, we can't control interest rates, we can't control financing, we can't control the competition. What can we control in this transaction? We can control price, terms, and condition of the house. And even on the conditions, there are some limits. I would always start with what is it that the first thing that the buyer is going to see is the outside and the front of your house. If they won't go in, they won't ever buy it. Right? And I, as a buyer's agent, I used to tell buyers, I used to try to encourage them to go into the house. I used to tell them that houses are like people. It's what's inside that counts. Right? I'm not kidding. I have no pride. And I've had people say, yeah, we're not going to look at it. Right? Nah, we ain't going in. Right? Do you understand? If the outside looks bad, they're not going to go in. And if they don't go in, then they're not going to buy the house. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Right? So we start with the outside of the house. Is the grass all brown? Right? Is the paint peeling? Is there debris on the roof? Right? Then you want to start with that. And then, I wouldn't do this, by the way, on the listing. Notice there's a checklist called Preparing Your Home for Sale. And the term staging, you could have a professional stager, but it also could simply mean them doing self-staging. Right? And this Preparing Your Home for Sale, I would not do this, by the way, the day you take the listing. Right? When you're on the listing appointment and somebody says, okay, yeah, we're ready to get started, you sign the papers and leave. Right? Give them disclosures to read and fill out. Make an appointment to come back and meet with them again, but get out of the house. The more you sit and talk to them, the less there's a chance you're going to say something that they're not going to like. Right? You're saying leave, get out of there. Right? And if it's one of the things, this is not necessarily in the material, but is a practical thing, one of the forms that you want to take with you on a listing appointment is called an authorization to exclude from the MLS. And this is a form that the Multiple Listing Service has. The Multiple Listing Service says that you have, I think it's 48 hours from taking a listing to putting it in the MLS, or they'll fine you if they catch you. I'm not sure how they would catch you, but they will. If the person were ever to complain, thank you. If the person were ever to complain. So the question that agents often ask me, usually newer agents, is, well, if they're not ready to put the home on the market, should I wait to sign the listing agreement? The answer is no. You sign the listing agreement that day. But they'll say, well, we're not ready to have people look at it. I understand, but there's a lot of preparation I need to do to get marketing materials and things done, and we need to have an agency relationship in order for me to do that. So we're going to go ahead and sign the listing agreement now, so I'll begin working for you, but we're going to exclude it from the MLS. And this form is a required form if you're doing that. If there was ever a problem and the MLS wanted to see your copy of it and you didn't have it, their fines start at $100. Right? The least amount that the MLS will fine you for anything is $100, and it goes up to $2,500. Yes?
So the purpose is to indicate that a listing has been taken.
Right.
And then ultimately you will list it on the MLS.
Right. And the form, which, by the way, you can find through the MLS, And it's also win forms, which is known as zip forms now. Some of us have, it's hardwired into our minds because it was called win forms originally, but it's zip forms. It's the same thing. Is that not, I thought, because Mike Sabilla was also saying win forms, and
What the hell is that?
well, it's zip forms. It's the same thing. There's a version of it that's there that is almost word for word the same as the one that the MLS has. Yeah.
Is there a deadline on the authorization?
No, you're supposed to write in one.
Okay.
You're supposed to write in a date, 2 weeks or something like that. It's not a big deal, but the Department of Real Estate also has this issue. This is something that was on the real estate test about what's called a pocket listing. If you don't put it into the MLS and you're doing it surreptitiously, deceitfully, it's a really bad thing. And so if you ever got into trouble, if they were to complain, for example, God forbid, and the Department of Real Estate wanted to see your file, and you don't have this form, and you didn't put it in the MLS, what this does is it makes it very clear that the owners have given you permission to list the home and not put it in the multiple listing service right away. Yes, Coco.
But to read this one, you have to explain why we need the signature. Then
Well, because they don't want people to start. Do you want people to come in tomorrow?
Right,
No.
Oh,
So
that's
they're this is when they say, well, why don't we wait?
Right.
Because the place isn't clean. Because do you understand what this has to do with preparing your home for sale?
Right. So
There's a reason I'm bringing this up now, because they got stuff to do before we start before it's showtime.
because you said just to listing day, just to give this paper and read, but then they say you may want to explain staging.
Well, but the idea is that you want to go ahead and sign the listing, and don't do this staging at that time. Set up another appointment to do it, and then be sure. I'm just saying, be sure to bring a copy of the authorization to exclude from the MLS.
And is that done on the initial time you take the listing?
As soon as you take, this is a form. What I would always, forms you need. How about this? This isn't number one. So this is not in order, but forms to list, right? Forms you need. This would, the first one, so this is not necessarily in order, is agency disclosure. And 3 is the listing agreement. And number 4 would be a data sheet from the MLS. So for the different types of classes, class 1 is a single family home, class 2 is a condo townhouse, there's a data sheet. And what the data sheet is, it's a list of all of the fields that are available in the MLS computer system. And it's my recommendation that you don't do this on the computer with them, but that you go through the form marking. I used to underline, and I would show it to the clients, because sometimes they'll say, well, we have 6 bedrooms. Yeah, but it's 5 or more. And they said, well, can't you put in 6? And you show it to them, it doesn't go that high, right? And so I would show it to them and say, these are the choices we have. Which one would you like me to pick, right? And then they read it and they say, well, how about I can put that in the comments, but I can't, these are the choices I have. So agency disclosure, by the way, is what you do first. Then there's a listing agreement, the data sheet, and authorization to exclude from the MLS. But agency disclosure, in the order of doing them, you're supposed to do first. How about this? You do it before the listing agreement.
Right.
Whether you do it first or I don't really care, but before the listing agreement.
Michael?
Yeah.
What if the home is a little sketchy, and if you can write, in the, details or comments or something, does that make that much of a difference? Can you make it better than, a kind of creative writing in that area?
Puffing,
Mhm.
I think is what they call it.
Yes, it is.
Nicest one on the block.
Yeah. No, not exactly that, but, use big words so people don't really
Has to do with ethics, doesn't it?
Well, first of all, what the question is, this isn't. This is related to servicing the seller, but most real estate agents do not know what to do with the comment section of the multiple listing service. Right? They have no idea what they're doing. Right? And the first 3 lines of the comments allows you to say things that would be visible to potential buyers on the internet. Right? Now, what I would recommend is the MLS knows that it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. So to say in the comments, this is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, when it's all over the place that it's a 4, you're just wasting space, right? So I would discuss things that are amenities of the neighborhood, the area, or the property that are not obvious from reading the facts in the MLS. Close to shopping, near downtown,
Within walking distance
of the mall, right, near light rail. If the property has been remodeled or has other things, this is where you could tell them. Now, what I suggested is that you ask the sellers what were the 10 things they liked best about living in this house. Did I mention that last time? Right. And I actually had a piece of paper. I don't have a copy of the form. It said the 10 things we like best about the house, and then there was numbers 1 through 10 and lines for them to write. So I would encourage the sellers to do that, and I would look at that piece of paper when I was writing the comments. Right? I would look at it. Because to some degree, we're trying to do 2 things. We're trying to keep the sellers happy. Right? And also, since they've lived there, they might know more about what's good about that property than we do. And the other thing we're trying to do is to communicate what's good about the property. So those lines should not be repeating things that are obvious. You also shouldn't use them to talk about disclosures that you have, right? We've got a termite report, right? What you have are 3 lines that allows you to say something about the property, the neighborhood, the area that'll be broadcast on the internet. And I wouldn't waste it. I see some agents who don't even finish 1 line because they have no imagination. And what they do, they have misspellings and abbreviations that I don't know what they mean. Yes, Harry.
Do you have an opportunity to create a draft and share it with that seller before it goes?
Yes, in fact, the MLS data sheet, which we mentioned here, has a place to write out the comments. And it actually shows you how many spaces you have on each line. I've actually given it to them, and because some of them wanted to do it themselves. Right? Because one of them gave me they wrote a paragraph like this, and I said, it's not going to fit, and I showed them, and I said, it has to fit here, and the guy said, give it to me, I'm going to work on it tonight, right? And he worked on his own 3 lines of comments. Why not? Why not? Right? Why not? Right? Let him do it. The one mistake that agents often make is they don't involve the sellers in the putting of information into the MLS. Right? They don't involve them, and then they're going to say, "Well, we have 6 bedrooms, and on Zillow it says 5+." Why? How? Well, because you didn't show them that there is no 6 option. Right? Right. So, anyhow. But this, by the way, is, in terms of seller service, this is, I think, one of the most important first steps. Because they're going to look on Zillow and Trulia, and they're going to look for their listing, and they're going to read it, and they're going to see it, and they may not like it, and you want them to like it. Because that's right. Let them get involved in the beginning so they're not calling you up. By the way, one of the things that you want to do is create a Google alert for the property. Now, let's say the house is 154 Herlong, and I wouldn't necessarily worry about the avenue or street in San Jose, and I would put quotation marks and create a Google alert that has the number and street of your listing. Now, what that will do is it means Google will be searching the internet all the time. By the way, the quotation marks, for those of you who don't know, when you put that in a search string with Google, it means that it has to be an exact match. Right? Because otherwise you're going to get everything that has 154 in it and everything that has Herlong in it. Right? And now what that's going to do is that when it appears in Zillow, your Google is going to tell you it's on Zillow. Then you can tell the clients it's on Zillow. And you could forward them, right? You could forward them, right? You could just forward it to them. Because what you're going to end up with is when is it going to be on Zillow? When is it going to be on Trulio? Will you let me know? They're going to ask you, will you let me know when it's on those sites? And how are you going to find out? Are you going to remember every morning to search? Again, you don't have time. If you had a lot of listings, you wouldn't have the time to do that. All right, does that make... All right, so homes in good condition will attract the most buyers and command higher prices. Homes in better condition sold for an average of 96% of list price compares to 92%. That's from a survey done by Keller Williams. And the truth is they will get more. They will get more if it's in good condition. So there's this checklist. And what you want to do is create an opportunity to come back and go through the property room by room. This, by the way, I'll tell you some of the reasons you don't want to do this at the listing appointment. You go into the kitchen, and they've got a coffee maker, a rice maker, a iced tea machine. They've got one of the bread makers, a toaster, a bagel toaster, right? And what that looks like is that they have no counter space at all. That's what it looks like. And so what would be best practices if they were to box, they may not be using the iced tea maker right now, to box up all the ones they can and put them away. I've suggested to people one of the vendors that, if you go to the Keller Williams Family Reunion, which I highly recommend, one of the vendors that you're going to see there is pods.
Fabulous.
Right? The pod is the big storage box that people have in their driveway. Right? Because what most people need to do is they need to get rid of all of the stuff that they've collected that makes it hard. My metaphor used to be, I used to tell people, houses are sometimes like comfortable shoes, right? You've got that pair of shoes that you really like to wear. They're really comfortable. You've built them. What is it? You've worn them in. They feel good, but would you wear them to a formal event? Probably not. So your house is sort of like that. By the way, if there's new homes in the area, I always would recommend that they go look at the models, because that's what we're trying to accomplish. Go look at some of the models. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, so where are they going to put all of that stuff? Attic, storage, garage. People are going to want to look in the garage, right? I had engineers who thought that the garage was the most important spot to look, right? And they would look for oil stains, right? Because the idea is that if the guy doesn't take care of his car, I mean, who would not take care of their car? They obviously aren't taking care of their house either, right? I'm not kidding, right? So that's the goal. Now, people will sometimes resist this. This is why you don't talk about it on the day that you're doing the listing. But come back.
Personal. I mean, they take it very
personal. Pictures of them and their families, right? It's going to be hard enough for the buyers to mentally move in with your furniture here. It's much more difficult if there's personal pictures. You should take them down. I've shared this with sellers. I've actually had buyers looking at the pictures and saying, "Oh, we don't want to buy this house. You know, they look so happy here, right? We don't want to buy it. We're going to break up their home. We don't want to do that."
Too, because people could be stalking.
Well, anyhow, that's a fine thought. But but you understand? We have a copy of this checklist, and what you want to do is create another appointment where you're going. It could be the next day. We're going to go through. You're going to walk through the house with them. You're going to start on the outside. I used to take people across the street and have them look at the house, and I would tell them, "Let's take a look at your house the way a buyer might look at your house." All right. A row of flowers down the walkway, new sod. I used to get people to replace the sod all the time. Painting the front of the house. What does the door look like? If the trees need to be trimmed? By the way, as a real estate agent, would it be a good idea for you to know people that do those sort of things? All right? Yeah. All right. Stay spotless. Make sure that the entire house is immaculately clean and stays that way. Would it be a good thing for you to know people that do cleaning? These carpets were done by my favorite group for carpet cleaning, which is called ChemDry. Right? There's a bunch of them. I used to always use ChemDry because the carpet cleaners that come in with the hoses and the hot water, they don't match a ChemDry cleaning, right? They dry faster. Those of you that saw it before, this is an enormous difference. You need to have a list of these vendors. By the way, when we talked about having a database, have we mentioned the idea of allied resources? Right? Because if you're giving those people business, might they know of somebody that wants to buy or sell a house? Right? So you might want to help them with cleaning people. You have to be a resource. Create a mood. Appeal to all senses. One way to do this is with smell. Baking cookies and bread. One of the things I used to show sellers, I had a list of things that were in the trunk of my car. I had a list. And I would show it to them. And one of the things on the list, there were things like aluminum foil that was on the list. And there was a thing of cinnamon, right, on the list. And I would show it to sellers just to sort of figure out why. And people would say, "All right, why?" You know. And what I would do sometimes at open houses is I'd take a piece of aluminum foil and I'd sprinkle cinnamon on it and I'd put it in the oven and turn it on warm. All right. And pretty soon there was a cinnamon smell. All right. So we're trying now. By the way, if they are inside cigarette smokers, there are companies that will try to get rid of the smell. If they have pets inside, the carpets may need to be cleaned. And they probably might want to try to do something with the pets during the time it's being shown. Right? The Rottweiler's name is Adolf. Don't let him in. Right? So that sort of thing on the, you know. Yeah.
Well, was it Melissa that had that house that the dogs had been in the house and were big dogs, and I guess they emit this odor because they get excited or stressed out when they've been locked up so long, and she had to like rip out the whole house almost.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you all my dog stories for houses. One seller showed me a certificate they'd gotten from the veterinarian that purported to show that the dog, even though he was old, had a good bladder. Right? Because there was definitely a doggy smell to this house. So that means the way to get rid of that is they have to paint and replace the carpets.
Sometimes even the sheetrock.
Or even sometimes, let's not, but does everybody understand sometimes this takes a little more work? Now people may say, well, I don't want to do that. I've had clients say, I'm not going to do that. This is way too much. And I said, you realize you're going to get a lot less money? And they said, I don't care. I don't care. All right, that's fine. By the way, is there a market for fixer-uppers?
Sure, yes. Yep.
Right, who buys them? Investors. And do they pay retail or wholesale?
Wholesale.
They pay wholesale, right? Are there people that are willing to buy the property and do all that? Sure, right? My guy Max would tear out the kitchens and bathrooms. He planned on tearing out the kitchens and bathrooms, right? He just planned on that because we were buying really old houses, and they usually had unfunctioning kitchen. Yeah, I mean, he'd tear them all out, right? But they have to realize that they're now in a different market. By the way, one of the best listings to have as an agent to get more clients is a fixer-upper. Because there's actually a code in the MLS for fixer-upper, and I would start on the first line, fixer-upper in the comments. I used to write, bring your hammer, right? Actually, one of them I wrote, bring your bulldozer, right? No, I'm not kidding, and that's why this was a house you wanted to tear down.
Assuming it doesn't offend the client.
Well, I know he knew.
Yeah.
I always show people what I'm putting in the MLS. I give them a copy. I give them a copy of the whole printout, not just the client copy, but the agent copy. A lot of agents won't do that, and they'll tell the owner, "Well, you can't see it because you're only allowed." They're the owner. They're allowed to see the full printout. Right? Because my feeling is if there's something there I don't want them to see, I'm doing something wrong. Right? So, you could spend some time on this. They have to decide. Remember, pricing is a strategy. Right? All of this is a strategy. People go to Salvation Army to buy stuff. Right? You've got the Salvation Army house. Right? You know? Right? The discount. The Goodwill house. Create a mood. By the way, baking cookies or bread is a great way to make the house smell warm and living. If there are other smells that you are trying to hide by doing this, it's fraud. It's fraud. If there are smells that you are masking, what will happen is the buyers will buy and they'll be inside with the windows closed and the heat on, and they'll smell it, and they will get a lawyer and sue you. Errors and omissions insurance does not cover deliberate fraud. Was that clear what I just said?
I was really mad.
Right. If it smells, you want the buyer to smell the smell before they buy the house. You don't want them to smell the smell after escrow is closed.
So when you inspecting, you have to turn the air conditioning and heat down?
Well, they will do that to make sure that it works.
Oh,
But the
professionals do that.
professionals will do that, right?
So once I get this, report, should be there.
But they don't, the smell, they're not necessarily, they're checking components.
To make sure it works.
Because there have been times where what the buyer said is every time they looked at the house, all the windows were open. Fans were going, right? And as soon as they bought the house, all the windows are closed, and they turn on the heater, and this horrible smell comes out, and they went and got a lawyer and they sued. Right? And they said there was always potpourri, there was always something smelly in the house whenever they were there. And you understand, if that's being done to hide a smell, you're committing fraud. You're committing fraud. And deliberate fraud is not covered by errors and omissions insurance. All right? You should mention it on the transfer disclosure statement. You should mention it in your AVID. What does AVID stand for? Agent's Visual Inspection Disclosure. You should mention it to them. All right? All right. Yeah. If there are offensive odors, air out the home or rent an air purifier to eradicate them. Good luck.
Yeah.
Make the house seem more spacious. Eliminate clutter in garages, closets, cabinets, on bookshelves, and countertops. Think outside storage.
That's where you have to be careful though with their, feelings, I think sometimes, because, I'm always like, oh, but this, goes with them, get rid of it. That's what I've always been told, so not very kindly, but.
Well, you are, does your doctor and your lawyer sometimes tell you things you don't want to hear?
Well, yeah, but it's important, really.
Right, first you get the listing. That's why, remember, have I mentioned that you don't do this at the time you're listing the house?
They kind of did that at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's a I get the listing, I get out of there, and then I come back, and then we go through, right. So make the front door entry inviting. Buyers will often stand outside the home for a few minutes while they wait to enter. Place potted plants outdoors, repaint if necessary. And then this is a copy of what you can get from Preparing Your Home for Sale, which is from eEdge. You can get one that has Keller Williams logo on it and all that. Remove personal effects. Pack up personal pictures, drawings, etc. Your goal is to make the house feel like a model home. It's almost like I'd read ahead. So that buyers can easily picture themselves in it. Ensure there's enough light. Most people live with the blinds drawn, and they get those, those funny lights that put out about the same illumination as fireflies, that sort of thing.
Well, maybe they don't want to show the dust.
Well, they don't want to show the dust, but we're going to clean that, aren't we? You go in with a leaf blower and just duct tape all the bric-a-brac down and just blow it. So, but now, do you understand why? You can probably see already there are people that are going to resist doing all this, right? They're going to resist doing it. That's fine. You're going to get less money, and it may take you longer to sell. Right? Do you understand? You're going to get less money. The payoff, they'll make more money than it will cost them to do this, but it's inconvenient. Pack up by ensuring there's a lot of light, which means, this is pretty self-explanatory, but whenever it's being shown, they need to open the drapes. Everywhere. Turn on every light. Go to a new home subdivision and look at the models. Right? Turn on every light. Even if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Trim back hedges, shrubs, let in light, keep blinds and curtains open. You want bulbs with the highest and safest wattage. Create curb appeal, keep the lawn mowed and hedges trimmed at all times. Should you know people, if you're a real estate agent, who does things like that? Right? Should they be part of your allied resources? And should you be asking them if they know of anybody thinking of buying or selling a house? Improving the landscaping is one of the most inexpensive ways to dramatically improve the appeal of the home. If we can't show it, we can't sell it. Almost half of the sellers enhance their curb appeal. By the way, this is another reason to take people to, if not everything that's in the neighborhood, show them what their competition looks like. Right? Pay attention to the areas of the home that will influence buyers the most. What would those be? What rooms do people spend the most time in?
Living room, bedroom, kitchen.
Master bedroom, kitchen, family room. Right? That's where the decision makers are.
And the bathroom.
And the bathrooms. The entryway, first impression, research shows the master bedroom and bathroom and the kitchen are the homes that are most important to buyers. I would agree with that. Not that it matters.
Check them out to see if they cleaned, certain areas.
All right. So, hiring a professional cleaner. I had several that were really fastidious. All right. Explain the importance of staging. Now, what we mean by staging is, I sold the house over on, it was called Norman, was the name of the street. It was Willow Glen. The guy that lived there was in his, mid to late 60s. His wife had passed away like 30 years ago, and he was getting married, right, to some young 59-year-old babe, and she had a house, so he was moving there. He had his original furniture, which is, if you were into 1950s kitsch, this had the look, right? Original wall hangings. There was, I swear, an Elvis, sort of the velvet Elvis, with his picture, a clock, right, on the wall. And so...
money.
Yeah, well, I told him that he should sell some of this stuff, but we needed to get it out of there. So the idea was, I got him. I don't pay for staging. Do you understand? I just want you guys to know I've never bought a buyer a home warranty, all right, nor have I ever paid for staging. My theory is that if you start paying for stuff, you'll keep paying for stuff. And it's better to just not pay for stuff. I'm not saying I've never paid for anything ever, right? But it would have to be really, it would have to be something that means we're not closing. All right. So the idea is let's consider who the buyer of this house would probably be. They're probably not in their 60s, right? They probably are a family with children, right? It was a 3-bedroom house. So what the stager did is one of the bedrooms was made for a young child. It had toys and posters, and the bedspread was something that a young child. Another one was sort of a generic teenager look. Right? Now, as I explained to the guy, the goal is that when the family is, and this, by the way, actually happened, when the buyers were in, one of the little kids ran in and said, "This is my room, this is my room." All right? All right? That's the goal of doing
Putting
that.
all the stuff in the stores then?
Yes.
Okay.
And by the way, his bride-to-be didn't want it. Right? He said, well, his first thought was, I'll take it to our new house. And she said, no, no, not, no. No, you're not. None of your stuff. Right? So, but do you understand that what we want to do is make the house look not like it's the people that are there, but for the people that are going to be there. Right? That's why staging can be important. Yeah.
Do they ask you, because they've asked us before, well, I love this, can we buy some of it, or can
They can talk to the stager. Right? Talk to the stager. I'm sure for the right price, the stager might sell you stuff. So the stager that I've used, I know a good stager. A good stager there are a lot of people, like one of our participants who isn't here had said, I like, fixing up homes and telling people how to fix up homes. The person I'm talking about has like a huge area full of furniture and stuff. And young guys with a moving van to come and move stuff in. And they spend like all day doing this, right? You understand, if it's a vacant house. And they put things in you understand, I mean, and the cost, this is a rough number, but she charges somewhere in the neighborhood of $700 a room, which is, by the way, inexpensive as staging goes.
expensive or?
Inexpensive as staging goes.
Per month?
I'm not sure. I think it's right now, I don't think that they're tripping on by month or whatever. So, but you understand that there have been a lot of studies that have shown that staged homes sell for more. I've had people clean everything out and then have it staged. Sometimes they don't stage every room. How about the master bedroom, the master bathroom, and the kitchen? Right? You understand? They don't care about the kids, right? They can. So, should you, as a real estate agent, understand staging and know stagers?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Right. And maybe you might want to talk to some. So have you ever noticed why builders hire professional decorators to model their home? This is a script. Wait for a response. Because it helps them sell more homes? Because they probably get more money when they sell the home?
Now,
Exactly.
if they don't have an outdated home and it's got decent stuff in it, then just clearing clutter and kind of.
That might be enough. We're covering all the eventualities here.
Okay.
Right? Some homes you don't need that. But and we have some scripts. I don't see let's say we have 3 apples for sale and they are all the same except one has been cleaned and shined. Which one will you buy?
That's kind of a pretty good analogy
Right.
because it's basic.
Do we have to make the repair? What I used to tell people was there's probably a 10-to-1 ratio between repairs and price. So what that means is something that costs $50 to fix, in the buyer's mind, $500. If it costs $500 to fix, in the buyer's mind, they're looking at $5,000, right? If it's something that's, in other words, when they're seeing it, the deductions that they're making mentally is not, they don't know exactly what it's going to cost to fix this, but the deductions that they're making mentally are huge, right? A lot more than what it costs to do it. Can we sell the house as is? Well, the answer is yeah. In fact, the standard contract we have is an as-is contract. All right, the standard contract is an as-is contract, but does everybody understand what as-is really means?
Yes, still you have to show amendment.
Pardon me?
Still you have to tell the truth. If
Right, but what it means is the seller is not obligated to fix anything,
Right.
right? That doesn't mean the buyer can't ask for things to be fixed. It just means the seller is not legally obligated to do it. And if the buyer makes a repair list and gives it to you in the middle of escrow, if you're the seller, you can choose not to fix anything, and the buyer can cancel and go buy another house if they want to. And then we put the house back on the market, right?
So if it happens, escrow means the buyer's reading able all fit in there. But if seller didn't follow the repair list,
Well, no, what I'm saying is under the California Association of Realtors standard form contract, the buyer's given a certain amount of time. The default is 17 days to get inspections. This is why you want to have a property inspection up front and a termite inspection up front, right? I'm bringing in people that are going to talk about that so that, but other things, you see, if you don't have a property inspection, they're going to find that one of the outlets doesn't work. The property inspector's got a little thing he sticks into every outlet to see if the light goes on. And if it doesn't go on, he's going to write it down. And what do you think the buyer's going to ask? He's going to ask the seller to fix it. And you could say no, or they'll ask for credit, right? And if you say no, the buyer can back out of the contract. Maybe they found another house they like better and want out anyhow. All right. What the staging plan, I don't know if we're going to have time today to do the stop and do, because it assumes that you guys have previewed and that how many of you could, what I'm recommending that you do, right, because we'll make this a positive thing. First of all, you ought to be previewing 10 homes a week. A week. That's the daily 10-4, right? Does everybody, have I mentioned the daily 10-4 before? Has that been?
Yeah.
Have I? All right, good. Yeah, and every class. This is like, what, number 16? Right? So I only mentioned like 4 or 5 times every class. And what you might want to do is, you see the staging worksheet? When you're previewing homes to practice this, you might be asking yourself, if I were the listing agent, what would I recommend that they do? Right? Do you understand? You need to be, by the way, there are classes that you can take. Some agents there's a designation you can get to be an accredited staging professional. There's a whole bunch of them, right? I'm not saying you necessarily want to do that, but some agents have gone ahead and do that and have done that. Sometimes they offer that as a free service, which I'm not big on. But it's something that you could, I've always found it better personally, because I've had people that work for me that were contractors and agents, and one of them quit and went to another company because we told them you are not allowed to do contractors' work on your own listings. Not here. You're not allowed to, right? Yeah, it's a conflict of interest. And people were complaining because he was overcharging them and, right, you know, it's a conflict. What does the word fiduciary mean? Right? From the real estate school, those of you that remember, it means faithfulness, putting the other person's interest at the highest level, above your own. And if you're charging them for stuff, right, at the same time you're supposed to be working on their side, that's very difficult. Right? And eventually this guy got sued. One of our other agents who we asked to leave, she was having a relationship with a contractor, and she would have this contractor do the property inspection instead of like a property inspector, and then would have all this work that he wanted to do, and they were living together at the time, and she wasn't telling anybody that her inspector was. Do you understand? You don't want to do any of this stuff, right? And so I wouldn't do. I mean, there's one thing giving people tips, but charging them money to you to put furniture in is nothing that I would recommend doing, right, on your own listings. I'm just saying I wouldn't do that. But
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
is it my belief is that if you, let's say you or anybody that went and took the course to become an accredited stager,
Oh, and then do it on your.
and then on your own listings you're telling people, I'm going to charge you $5,000 up front to stage your home. I'll need a check for that, please. And I'm also your agent. Oh, believe me, you really need the staging, right? You understand? There's sort of a, but I'm really on your side, right? You know, I mean, that's a difficult position to be in, right? And if something goes wrong, it's going to look really ugly when you're referred to as the defendant, and the lawyer, right, is asking you questions. You know, I'd just as soon not do that. Yeah.
In your experience, you said that you never paid for staging yourself.
Right.
For your clientele. On any occasion, if the resident was empty, did you actually have it staged and they paid for it?
Yes, many times.
Okay.
Many times.
So there's a willingness there?
Right. What I would do is I had property staged a lot. I'm just saying I wouldn't pay for it.
Yeah.
Some real estate agents try to buy business. By buying business, they'll say, well, I'll pay to have your home staged. I'll pay for the home warranty. I'll pay for all this stuff. I wouldn't do that. Right. Yeah.
Can stagers get paid out of escrow at the closing?
So you have to talk to stagers. Some will,
Mostly,
but many won't. Right.
That's not.
No assurance.
Right.
You'd have to ask, right? Because in this market, you could probably find some stagers that would do that, but they will charge more,
Okay.
right? Because they may not get paid. Many of the inspectors will do work and bill it to escrow, but some won't. Yeah.
So stagers are only, like, if the house is empty, you get a stager?
Not necessarily. I've had people move furniture out. This guy, it was not completely empty, but we got rid of his junk and put in nicer junk.
yeah. Well, that's what we did.
Right. So do you understand? Not everybody is good at design, colors, layout. And having somebody who's good at that come in and rearrange stuff even makes a difference.
How about if they want to leave their, like, some of their furniture, they can take some of the junk out?
What I always did, by the way, since we're talking about this, what I used to do on big ticket items like stagers is I would give them 3 names of stagers. And I would have them interview 3 different people rather than just saying, here's my stager.
That's
Right.
a good idea because we didn't have a choice.
Right. Well, and everybody understand why I would do that is I wanted them to get different opinions and different estimates. Because if I have one of the people that I know that does staging is a friend of mine, and I know she does a good job, but I don't want to just direct somebody there, right? Did you understand what I'm saying? I would rather they pick. And even, by the way, I've even done this on home warranties and other small ticket items where I would give them a list of people to choose from. A lot of times they would say, you pick. But like, for example, an escrow and title companies, and this is very unusual, this is very unusual, but sometimes I would let them interview title companies, right? Rather than just saying, I use Chicago Title, we're going to use Chicago Title, right? You know, and if the people wanted to, I'd say, fine, you can pick the title company. right? Because then if escrow gets all messed up, right? I can say, well, my title company never did that. All right, so is everybody, this was an important first part of this. Does it seem, for those of you that have been coming to class, that there's more and more and more stuff to learn, right? Because this whole concept of how do you fix things, how do you clean things, how do you stage things is really an important component in selling property for the highest price. Market the listings. What are you doing now is unleashing your marketing plan. I like that. And notice it talks about using QR codes in your marketing materials and signs that provide links or listing information. Does anybody know what QR stands for?
It's one of those little boxes.
Yeah, I know. What does QR mean?
Question, quick return.
You're close. Quick response is what it stands for.
Who said that? Kim?
Ross did.
Oh, Ross did.
Ross gets the cookie that we give as the...
And a glass of milk.
And a glass of milk. No, he lost that because his cell phone went off. So that was one foul. What? So, by the way, if you're a marketing professional, are you going to tell them that you're a marketing professional?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you say, we're going to have a QR code?
Yes.
And the owner says, QR, I've always wondered, what does that stand for?
You could say.
And you say, I don't know. I have no idea.
Oh, stop.
Right? Is that what you're going to say? No. You might want to know it stands for quick response.
You could make up something really clever.
Yes.
In
Of
a
course,
quick response.
in a quick response. Yeah.
Think of a quick response.
So, does everybody understand what these are and why we use them? By the way, they're not as big of a deal. This is one of those things that there was a lot of bellowing and trumpeting when they came out. But the reality is that many people don't have a QR reader on their phone, right? Which you'd have to download for free. But as of last year meaning 2011, like only 5% of people's smartphones had a QR reader and then used it. However, that number is improving because even restaurants and other people, they have those little funny codes, right? By the way, there's a whole series of these. I'm not going to do I have a class, I have a video on QR codes. But there's a whole bunch of different kinds of them. And, by the way, for those of you that like personal, Jennifer has one on the back of your...
My business card, but...
This is actually not a QR code, but is another kind of code. There's 3 or 4 different kinds of codes,
But
right?
they're all called quick response.
They're all types of QR codes, but this one's a special type. And the other ones are they look like a Rorschach, little splatter test. And by the way, there are free services to create these. If I were to I don't want to spend too much time on this. Let's say I had I wanted them to go to my website. Okay, and the website that I'm going to pick is does everybody know that I have a real estate school?
Yes.
Have you heard that? Right. So if you know of anybody who's interested in buying or selling real estate, right? Right. So what I'm doing is I'm copying. Yeah, you'll get a referral. And then I'm copying this URL. Now the URL could be to a document. Right? If I have Google Documents, let's say I go to my Google Documents, let's say I had a document. And I'll pick something, maybe something real estate oriented. So, for example, one of the things that I've created just as a way of demonstration is I have a section which are called, where is it called? It's called Practice Ignite. How about sample? Yes, no, I'm not going to do that one. So this is a sample of an environmental hazards guide for home buyers, property. This is a bunch of reports, right? And so let me see if I can find it here. If I click on this, and I click on share, and I click on share, and I have anyone who has the link, and I copy this. Notice that's a really long thing. Now, what that is, it would take somebody to documents, right? But let's just start, let me just do the one with the, here. So I do this. One of the easiest ways is Google has something called a URL shortener. And I take this and I paste it in and I hit shorten. And it's going to give me this, and I Control C it. And if I go over here and I want to, it gives me the long URL, the short URL. Nobody's clicked on it yet. Let me go back. Where am I? What am I doing here? Details. Look what it's done up here in the top right.
Nice.
Oh, it just did that.
So Google will, if you use Google's shortener for URLs, it'll make you a QR code. And so if I were to notice how when my cursor, see it's an arrow, 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 finger, arrow, arrow, finger. So if that's what it looks like. If I were to right click on it, I can copy the image or save the image as, and I now have a URL that takes people to my website. All right?
And so can they navigate within that website?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically what this allows us to do is to, one of the things that's related to this, can I erase this part here? What I would suggest that you do, and by the way, I would suggest that you practice on this before you go there. Because when I talked about doing a listing appointment, you want to have sample flyers, you want to sample everything. One of the things that you're going to probably want to do is create a single, what's called a single property website. Now, if you've listed it and it's in the Keller Williams system, and I'm going to show you where you can study online more about that. One of the things that we do once your listing is in what's called the KWLS, the Keller Williams listing system, is we create a landing page, which is a one page with its own link, but it may be kind of a crazy link, that when people go there, it has your contact information, it has pictures of the property and descriptions. It's basically a one-page like flyer on the internet. Okay? Now, you also can create an entire website that's dedicated to this particular listing. And I think I've done a class, I think I have a video on this. I would recommend using what's called Blogger or blogspot.com, which is the Google blogging service. When you have a listing, and everybody here is part of my coaching program, when you get a listing and you want to make a single property website, I'll show you how to do that. I have videos someplace on how to do it, but it allows you to create a whole bunch of tabs. Like information about the schools, that could be a tab. The neighborhood could be a tab, right? There's a whole bunch of things. But so where we're going with this is by the way, these are related. So you're also going to get what's called a KWLS landing page, which is the easiest thing to do. And what I would recommend is that you go to Office Depot, Office Max, or Staples, and you can buy, Avery makes bumper sticker templates. And you get a pack of them, and you run them through any inkjet, they probably work on laser too, any printer you've got, and they give you, it's a Microsoft Word template, and basically what it prints out are bumper stickers. Now, the reason why we're doing this is not because you're going to put them on the car bumper, but what a bumper sticker is that you peel off the back and it's adhesive, and the front of it is coated so that it's somewhat resistant to water and sun. Won't last forever. And what I would then do is, let's say there's the for sale sign. The for sale sign, looks like this, right? And so, I'm not doing that very well. So you're going to want to have riders, which says, call Mike, and has your phone number. And then you're going to have a sign, which you'll get. and a brochure box that's on the outside. And what I would do with my bumper stickers is I would usually put two of them together, and I would stick them to the wooden post that goes across, and it would have the website for the property. Now, if you're willing, I would sometimes go to the trouble of going to GoDaddy and spending $9, $10 to buy a domain for the particular property. What Blogger will do is it'll allow you to create a URL for free that would go something like www.124starling.blogspot.com.
Nice.
Right? And so you don't have to pay the $9 or $10 to GoDaddy to buy a domain. Now, the reason for this is that and the advantage of using the Blogger site over just this landing page has your information, your email, and your contact information. But on Blogger, I could have more calls to actions, things that they can download, a free report about buying your home, and tips and stuff about buying a home. Because what I wanted them to do is to fill out a form to get this thing, and I wanted to capture their leads.
And how is that captured somehow through a Keller Williams?
It can be.
Contact name?
It can be, right. So if they go to the landing page, it's integrated, but we can put on our Blogspot a property search widget, which if they fill out to search for properties goes into the Keller Williams e-edge system. So the point, what I'm trying to do, first of all, are there always going to be brochures in the brochure box?
Yes.
No.
Isn't that your job? Make sure they're always.
That's our QR code.
Okay.
First of all, they'll disappear. Kids will take them. Other agents will take them. That's what I always used to do. I'd take everybody's brochures when I went down the street.
That's
All right? No. Anyhow, they'll disappear. So you might want to print out some extras to give to the owners. Right? Because they're there. Right? Extra. But if you have a QR code on your bumper sticker on the sign, people can just take a picture of it and they'll get a link which has your information. So the link would go either to your full-featured single property website or at the very least to the Keller Williams landing page, which might be a great big long URL if only we had a URL shortener that would make a QR code, right? If we could only find one that was free. And by the way, the other thing that Google is going to do is it's going to tell me how many people have clicked on each of my things that you notice I use this. I've got 31 of them, and you can see some things 25 people have clicked on, or it's been clicked on 25 times. So Google will not only shorten the URL into something that isn't really, really long and weird, make a QR code, which I can create as it's an image which I can download and paste into things like flyers, and I put them on the sign. Putting them on the flyer doesn't really help that much because the flyers are going to be gone. And basically it's got the same information, but putting them on the sign so people can click on the sign. Did you have a...
Yeah, I mean, is this the Google Analytics that I've heard about?
No, this is not Google Analytics.
Okay, but it does have analytics in there.
It does have modified analytics in that it tells me how many clicks.
Okay,
But notice,
sure.
this is for something quick and easy.
Doesn't
Yeah.
give you any other information, correct?
That's all that it gives you. Yeah.
So the QR, so if you have it there, then the people can put their phone there and it'll take them to their webpage?
Well, they don't have to do the phone. You have to download a QR reader. And one of the things, if you don't have a smartphone, go get one. All right? I'm just telling you, if you don't, if you have one of those flip phones, it's time to get a smartphone and go to the app store, whichever religion you're in. If you're in the Android religion or the Mac religion, you go to where and download a QR reader and practice it and start reading QR codes. An advanced topic is, I used to have there are online services. This is sort of an advanced topic. I don't know, you guys don't, not sure this is the advanced group, but I would have a phone number that people could call. And these are called, there's an online, what's called a PBX system. And what I would promise them on the flyer is that they would get a virtual tour that they could watch instantly on their phone. The virtual tour was done on YouTube. The nice thing about YouTube is that it configures itself to smartphones. And so there was a phone number that they would call, and when they called it on their cell phone in front of the house, they would immediately get a link sent to their phone, and when they clicked on the link, the YouTube virtual tour would start to play. It also captured their phone number. And it would send me a text message saying that there's so-and-so, that this phone number is standing in front of your listing watching your virtual tour. And then I would call them and ask them questions. Right? That's an advanced topic. Right? When you get a listing, right, and I'm coaching you, I'll show you how to do that. Right? But you understand from baby steps, once you put the listing in, you get a QR code and you start putting it on things.
But the QR code will lead you to
a web page.
a web page.
The QR
And on the web page, it won't have a tour?
It could.
Okay.
But the thing is, what the QR code does not give me is the phone number of the person using it.
Okay.
Right? The reason why I did that other step is I wanted their cell phone number so I could call them and talk to them.
That's
Right.
only if when they do the virtual tour.
That's only, you have to give them something that would make them make a phone call. And this is a more advanced thing. When you get a listing, I'll help you do it. Right? I promise. But it requires probably paying a small fee for what this online PBX system. Right? But anyhow, I'm just saying they'll give you a number and it'll do all this stuff. It isn't very expensive. So, how are we doing? Does everybody understand that we're into something else that you need to learn, right? Which is a little bit about marketing. And you want to price it, stage it, implement your 14-point marketing plan, place the for sale sign. Your name, notice our for sale signs allow you to put your name and your phone number. Don't put the company phone number on your for sale signs. Put your number. Interactive voice response. IVR. This is another system. There's Arch Telecom, which I used to use. And what this was basically was an 800 number that people could call and hear a complete recording about the property. The advantage of that is that it also captured their phone number. Right? And you can call them back. I used to use that too. You should distribute just listed notices in the neighborhood. When sellers would say, well, why are you going to do that? According to the National Association of Realtors, somewhat like 7%, when they asked buyers, how did you find the home? About 7% of them said, from somebody in the neighborhood told me about it. I had a listing in Almaden. And as soon as it went on the market, I double-ended it. It was a long story, but the neighbor called a coworker because the coworker had been to the neighbor's house and said, this is a wonderful neighborhood. Oh, I wish I could live in a neighborhood like that. And as soon as my listing, he called his coworker and said, this is when the market was not that great. And the guy came and looked at that, called me and bought the house. Right? So there's a certain number of, do you think that, I would say to sellers, do you think that's true? That people in the neighborhood have friends that say, that know people that say, right? Don't you think? And remember, the goal is to expose your property to the greatest number of potential qualified buyers, right? So we're going to let everybody in the neighborhood know.
That happens too, like if you buy a property in a neighborhood and you're moving in, they all are knows who they would come by. Oh, who's your agent? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So what you're going to want to do is, if you can afford a postcard, do it. Otherwise, flyers. Best practices is knock on the door. You step back and you say, hi, my script, which came from a guy named Jim Drews, was, I would step back and I would say, "Hi, my name's Mike Dillon. I'm with, and I'm sorry to interrupt you during your private, quiet time." I always say that, right? That's because I was trained. I use scripts.
Sorry,
I admit that. I
Quiet,
learned
quiet.
scripts and
It's
what?
kind of hopeful.
I know that, but people, a lot of things sound hokey when
Not
we're
hokey, but scary.
scary. Sorry to interrupt you in your quiet, private time. But the Andersons around the corner I've just listed the house, and you're going to probably see a sign and all that. And I just wanted to let you know that the home is for sale and to give you the information about the property because you might be curious, and to see if you had any questions.
So you give one of the flyers?
Give them one of the flyers, and then they say, "Oh, all right, and I would say, how long have you folks lived here?
And they're like, we want to have our creepy chimes listed.
Yeah, well, I got pepper sprayed a few times, that's all, but it wasn't that bad. Just kidding, just kidding. I've never been pepper sprayed
But
knocking on the doors of the houses. But then I would eventually say to them, so when do you plan on selling your home? Right? Sometimes people would say soon. A lot of times in this market, people are going to be really curious as to what you listed the home for. By the way, related to this, the just listed, in farming, what produces the greatest amount of responses, the greatest impact, is what's happening in the market, neighborhood updates, just listed and just sold. Right? Those are the three things. People care more about that than your Aunt Mabel's apple strudel recipe, right? Which agents like to send out to people, right? They can get recipes off the internet, but just listed, just sold in a market update. By the way, what I always also would do is when I would do an open house, and even when the market was crazy before, when I was selling, there was times that it was crazy, I would say we're going to do an open house. I wanted to do an open house because we're going to get the best price, expose your property to the most. We'll just one weekend we'll do it. We'll take offers Monday following the open house, right? 6 o'clock will be a cutoff date. We'll plan to meet Monday nights to review them or talk about what happened. And what I would do is on Saturday and Sunday when I would do the open house, it would be like 1 to 4 in the afternoon for the public, but in the morning from like 10 to 11, I would do a special open house, a secret open house just for the neighbors. And I would send the neighbors a postcard that says we're having a special showing just for the neighbors. I'll bet I use the phrase, I bet you want to see what your neighbors have been up to. Right? I bet you do. You're curious, admit it. You want to know. And so what would happen is at 10 o'clock they'd start showing up, and I would have cookies and coffee and stuff like that. And the idea was I knew these people were in the neighborhood and were curious. These were all potential sellers.
you learn a lot about the area more also.
Right.
Have time to spend with them.
You should ask people, how long have you lived here? What made you buy in this neighborhood? What do you think are the best, you want to talk to them, chat it up. So remember the goal, we want to get another listing and we would like to get a buyer. And so we want to do all of this. Optimize the online presence with the Keller Williams listing system. Another program, and again, those of you, I know I keep saying that it's the people that I'm coaching, I'm going to help do this. Some of you are self-starters. There's a program online called Animoto.com. And for creating a virtual tour, your options are, now by the way, I used to pay for a professional photographer to go take pictures of the property. Right? I did pay for that. A professional photographer. Animoto. Not a cell phone pictures that I took. Right? A professional photographer to go take pictures, because unless you've had photography classes, you're probably not going to take that good of pictures. All right? Well, there's a guy in the office, Kavika, who does that. But you could. So where I'm going with this is that if you have a bunch of good pictures, you can create your own virtual tour. Animoto will create a video out of pictures. So will Movie Maker, or Apple has one too, which I don't know the name of. iMovie. So if you have a computer that uses either Windows or Apple, you have a program that'll allow you to, what you do is you put all of the pictures into a PowerPoint presentation. And the reason that you put them into PowerPoint is you also can create additional slides which have details about the property, comments about the property, your contact information, your picture, all your stuff, right? And then you make the PowerPoint presentation and you get it all organized, and then in PowerPoint you can export it all as pictures, and the PowerPoint will create a stack with each side being a JPEG or a PNG, right, portable network graphic picture file, which you then import into iMovie or Movie Maker, and it'll make each one, and you make a video. People say, where do I get free music from? And when they send me the email, I copy the question, where do I get free music, and I paste it into Google and send it back. And you're going to find that there's lots of people that have royalty-free music, right? Yeah, and anything that you borrow from Keller Williams, you're probably not going to get sued for, because it's our stuff. And Animoto will do things where it zooms in and then zooms out, and I mean, if you want to, it makes a real. And so what you do is you make a little movie from the pictures and slides that you've made. This is not very hard to do. And it'll export it as an MP4 file, which you can upload to your YouTube channel. YouTube, right? I have videos on how to do a YouTube channel, right? And then you now have a virtual tour that you can send to people, have a QR code linked to. The QR code can do really three things, two of them well. One is that it can require you can get a text message back that has like 600 spaces. Right? There's not a lot you can do. The most useful thing is that it will connect to a link. And that link could be a YouTube video. It could be a web page. You get one shot at this. Right? You get one shot at it. All right. And so here are a list of all of the places that we're going to put your listing. Produce and place a virtual tour. Create a home book. I used to have a binder. Remember, with tabs, I would have copies of inspections and reports and disclosures. I would have it in the property. I would have a market analysis that I've made that shows that this is underpriced. I would have all of the escrow garbage about, and I would have a great big binder in the property. I would have information on the schools, everything in the property, so people could look through it, right, when they're there. Comment cards. If you go, this is a useful thing. Comment cards are used to explain things that are not that visible. Like, let's say there's copper plumbing. New copper pipes. People can't really see that from walking around. Right? You don't have to put bathroom, right, on the card and put it in the bathroom. People can probably figure out that that's the bathroom. But other things which you might want to do, if you see, the problem is that if you're the listing agent, you may not be there when the property is being showed, and the agent who represents the buyer may not be smart enough to point out the nice parts of the property. Therefore, go to a new home subdivision. Do they have little cards around that explain things? Dual pane windows, right? There's a little card that says that. How would you possibly get cards that you could use, that you could print on? Go to Office Depot, Office Max, or Staples, and they have little templates that you can feed through a computer printer, and you can print whatever you want to on the little cards, and they fold, and you put them around. You can make flyers. E-Edge allows you to make flyers. So if you go to My Marketing, and notice one of the choices is create marketing materials. And I'm not going to spend a lot more time on this because there's an arrow, because I've been there too long. It's logged me out probably.
Oh, that's what that is.
Probably. But let's see, it's letting me back in. So what I would recommend that you do is if you go to Resources in eEdge, and you're going to go to Archived Training. First of all, there is a Market Leader Pro Benefits. That's something else. This is new. On-demand e-training. They've changed it a little. And by the way, just as a tip, this works in almost every browser. If you do Control F, it'll see this little thing down here, MyMarketing. My Marketing. Here's a new My Marketing training webinar for 31 minutes. If I hit next, the new My Marketing, everything you need to know. I hit next. Lesson number 7, get started with My Marketing today. I hit next. There's 2 copies of that. 8, automate your lead generation with My Marketing campaigns. So there's training, and what it will do is we have templates for you to make flyers for the property, right? That you can then print out.
Which one did you do, Control, right?
Control F allows you to find any term that's on that page. So the reason I do that is there's a really long list of videos. It's a really long list, and you could scroll down looking until you saw My Marketing, but if you do Control F, type in My Marketing, and hit find, it'll tell you where it is on that page, and you can find the videos really easily. So you need to learn how you can make flyers. Target, eEdge, touch campaigns. You're also going to want to run Craigslist ads. I don't know if this is here. The MLS tour. The multiple listing service has a tour. It's called the board tour. It's also called a marketing tour. You should find out, talk to your team leader. They'll change depending on the location of your listing. Different areas have their own little tours. You want to put it on the tour. If you go to the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors, you talk to your team leader, they'll tell you which tour. I could do that too. The Santa Clara County Association of Realtors has a list of them. And they'll have a person that's in charge of the tour, and they'll have instructions on how to get your listing on the tour, and you put your listing on the tour. And then you show up, and you bring a few bucks, because everybody has to, you bring business cards, and some, what is it, $5 now? $5, and you throw it in, the business card in a basket, and you give them the $5, and they have food, right? So they have, it's not that they have coffee, and sometimes they have hot breakfast, they have food, everything that real estate agents do has food. Right? And so there's food, and then lenders are going to talk, and title reps are going to talk, and home warranties are going to talk, and they're 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 going to talk, and then at the end of the talking, which will go on, right? Then they call it a caravan, because people jump in cars together if you are sociable, and you drive around and you look at listings, and they'll look at your listing. And what you do is you make a little sheet that you can have people fill out that asks them what they think about the property. Is the price high or low? I have samples of all these things. The reality is many of the agents on that listing have no idea if your listing is high or low. Right? They're there because they have a listing that's on the tour, and they've never looked at homes or sold homes in your neighborhood. Many of them have no clue, and they'll ask you, what do you want me to put down on the sheet? You know, what do you think? So that the idea is that you'll collect business cards, and you'll collect these little feedback forms, which you could then share with the seller. I have sold a house simply because I put it on the tour. Because it was a townhouse. By the way, this was part of a Domino's where I had to sell their townhouse for them to buy a house in Almaden. Right? And the townhouse was not selling, and I was getting to the end of the listing period, and I'd put it on the board tour again, and somebody that was her broker had a listing in the area and made her go, because if you don't have a representative, they won't tour it. Right? You understand? You can't. They won't just tour it if you're not there. So the broker made her go so that there would be somebody that would be there for the tour of his listing. And she's looking at this townhouse that I had listed, and she had clients that were looking for a townhouse in that price range, but not that area. They bought it. right? And then those people bought a house that I sold them in Almaden, and then 3 years later they sold the house. I listed it in Almaden and moved to Reading. I tell that story to sellers because sometimes, and to agents, sometimes that's the thing that sells the house, right? Plus, you can tell your clients that you did the tour, right? You did it. And here are the cards, and here's what the people said.
What's the Friday?
Which Friday?
With a different,
Every area has a different tour. They keep changing all the time. I'm not up. Some of them are on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. They're all spread out.
All on Wednesdays.
No, there's some on. There's others too.
Really?
Yeah, there's some on Fridays. The one over at the Elephant Bar, which is over in Campbell, I believe, is on Friday mornings.
the one that's.
And I've been to one in Milpitas that's in Tuesdays. But I haven't checked recently.
So Mike, how do you get into that list? Because I know Doug sent me an email before I joined the car. But now that I joined, I don't get that on Tuesday nights.
Tim and I talked about that.
Well, I sent it to you.
Yeah, but how do I get it, like, so they keep sending it to me?
Call Tracy.
Not automatically?
All right, I typed in SCCAOR, which stands for the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors, marketing tours into that which knows all. And what I see underneath this block up here are paid for things, marketing and tour calendar of SCCAOR.com, and I'm clicking on it. And here are the different areas. And it does look like they're all on Wednesday now. But
No, but there was.
I don't know. The last time I'm not active, but there they are. You also can do what's called a broker open, which you can promote in the MLS, which is where you're just holding an open house for brokers,
That's what I.
right? And you can do that. That you can do that anytime. The only tip I'll give you is that if you do not have food, they will not come.
That's why
Right.
they do it at lunch.
If you have food, brokers, people, if you want to get real estate agents to show up for something, offer to feed them, right? So if you have something, you go and you get those little tray lunches from Safeway or something, right? And you invite them to come by, agents will come by. We're all going on the assumption that they might know somebody that wants to buy the house. All right, so those are the tours. It has the name of the tour director. You call them, you put it on the tour.
And not all the houses have agents there, so you'll need your super key.
Right.
Really? I thought that to be on a tour you had to be there.
Last week I went to, there were 2 or 3 houses that I needed my
Well,
super
the tours I've been to, people would rebel and not look at them sometimes. But bring your key. I'll give you a chance to practice opening up. You should be previewing properties. Produce an advertisement placements. By the way, we have a way of easily running an ad into Craigslist. You want to run ads into Craigslist on your listing. You ought to be running ads in Craigslist even if you're not doing it on your listing. There's videos on how to do that. But you should be creative enough that you can write 3 ads on the same property that sound like they're on 3 different properties.
I did.
Right? Because Craigslist is not going to let you run 3 ads that are identical. By the way, you do not have to tell them the address of the property if you don't want to. You don't have to.
You don't have to tell them.
Hardly anything. So one ad, you put the whole address. Another ad, you put the street name without the number. Another ad, you don't put anything in for the address, but in the text and in the title, you tell them it's in Blossom Valley or 95123 or something like that. And open house, we had a class on, didn't we?
Yes.
And you can target, provide weekly updates on your showing, and there's a marketing plan, and I'm tired and I think we're done.
I think those, and open houses are really, arduous for the sellers sometimes.
They need to, but you see, they need to get it. What I tell sellers, her comment is that aren't they open houses arduous for the sellers? I would tell my sellers that this is the best thing. This is going to save you a lot of hassle because rather than having all these 40 people coming in at different times of the day all week long, we're going to have them all come at once in a herd where we can control them.
least amount of hassle.
Right.
Yeah, but a lot of times my